Welcome to the channel. I'm David Poe. Today we're going to be painting a landscape from our imagination using a common compositional element, which is going to be a diagonal. We're going to start with a landmass that's going to be diagonal. We're going to cut in here with like a lake coming in, creating another triangle, and then some interesting woodlands here in that section. At least that's the picture that I've got in my head from my imagination that we're going to try to translate into paint today. Now, what's on the palette today? So here on the palette, I'm using Lucas colors primarily. Those are available from Jerry's Artorama here in the United States. It's from a company in Germany, I believe. So we got three what we call earth tones. We've got burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and then ivory black. Here we've got alizarin crimson permanent. We've got cad yellow light. This is phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, and then titanium white. I'm using a half box easel, just an off-brand. It's nothing special. Using some bristle brushes. These are Utrecht. They're mainly flats. Let's see, numbers 8, 6, 4, and 2. And then I have a couple of synthetics. These are Aspens from Princeton. It's a number 2 round and a number 2 liner. So 6 brushes. Also got a palette knife in case I need it. Got the paints ready to go. I've already primed this canvas. This is a cotton canvas on a board, and this has been pre-toned with an orange, which was a mixture of cad yellow light, of course, and then a little bit of the alizarin crimson permanent. So that will make sure that we don't have any white space calling out for us today. I'm going to move these just slightly so I've got enough room. All right, I've also got Gamsol, and I'm not using any medium today. I'm going to start off with the number 2. I'm going to gently sketch in with a darker color. I'm going to use, let's see, this paint's kind of hard right now. I haven't used it for a while. Ultramarine blue and some alizarin crimson. Get that working. Make a nice purple. I'm going to use this color to sketch in the imaginary landscape. So, like I said, we're going to try for the diagonal type shape. So these, think in terms of a landmass that's over here. I don't want it to be a straight line, of course, but I do want it to suggest the shape. Then we're going to cut through here with a water element. So how far do I want the water element to come? I think I'm going to this is basically the horizon line. Well, not the horizon line, what am I saying? It's just the water line. And up here, because I guess it is going to be the horizon line, because then we're going to put in a little bit of a forest, if you will, right up here in this area. So I'm just going to kind of sketch in some shapes with the tops of these trees. Here I'm just thinking I want to make sure that the shapes are not similar. Just suggestive of where the branches might be. And I will concentrate on detail later on. I want about 3 shapes. I want it to make sure it's an odd number. Okay, I think that gives us a pretty good start. And to get us back into this painting, I might want to suggest that there's some kind of element getting smaller as it goes back with this original image here. So maybe there's Maybe there's a little road that's coming this way. Maybe that road disappears somewhere there. And of course it got bigger here and it's going that way. And then we can deal with some of this. Once again, if we wanted the horizon line to just kind of line up, we could kind of sketch it in just ever so lightly there. And then this is the shoreline over here, going to our other shapes. Okay, oh, I forgot my paper towels. Gotta get my paper towels. And I gotta get something to drink. This might be a good time to let you know, if you like these painting demos, there's a number on the channel, and would sure appreciate it if you would sign up and then give a like. And I've also discovered that it kind of helps to generate more viewership if you write a comment, even if it's, hey, thanks for the video, or hey, I really thought that sucked, hey, why are you using those brushes? I never use those brushes, they're terrible. Why don't you use Rosemary Co. Brushes, or maybe you like to say, oh, Lucas Oils, I can't stand using them. I don't care what you say. Saying the comment means more people might respond to the video, and then I believe it really helps the algorithm to disperse the video some. So if you wouldn't mind helping me out with that, I would greatly appreciate it. Once again, so we got the composition. There's one thing I didn't test, and now it's becoming evident to me. We want to make sure that the horizon line is not dead center in the painting, which tends to be what happens. And look at that. Let's see, so let's measure. There it is. Ah, it is. It's almost center. So how do we fix that? Well, the fix is pretty simple, isn't it? You take some of that paint, and I'm going to move this down. So we're gonna move that horizon line. This is one nice thing about oil paints. We can change it very quickly. So I'm going to put this horizon line down here now. And let me get a paper towel. Wipe this brush off. I'm going to dip it into a little bit of Gamsol. And then, a little too much Gamsol, I'm going to erase these other lines. Okay, so those trees are just going to be brought down a little bit more. I don't need to worry too much about that. And we're still going to have the lake here. There's still the diagonal composition, but we're making sure that we don't have that break into equal parts. Otherwise, where's the focus going to be? It's going to feel like a flag, and it's not going to be very interesting if that horizon line is dead center. So, and it's a mistake that you make, but it's not actually a mistake. Your eye is telling you these proportions, and you won't even notice that you're doing that. But the eye tends to favor some things that actually do not make for good paintings. And so you have to kind of train yourself. Also, the eye, or mind, it favors objects and shapes that kind of look similar. So we got to make sure that as we are composing the scene to take some time at the very beginning and make sure that our shapes are distinct and different, making sure that our line proportions are correct before we ever get started. Otherwise, as you can see from my mistake today, that would have been not so good. It would have really defeated this painting before we even got started if I had let it go without realizing, I didn't put that line down lower enough. All right, so we got two options at this point. Sometimes I start darks, do all my darks, and then go into the lights. Today I'm feeling not so much in that mood. I want to get used to just my brush strokes. It's been a little bit of time since I've did the last video and worked with the canvas, so I'm just going to take some titanium white. This is pretty, I let it sit on the palette too long, so it's all chunky. Bring it back to life with a little Gamsol. There we go. I use just a little bit of the phthalo blue. Get a little bit of phthalo blue. There we go. It's evening here in Missouri. I've discovered that this room is not as well lit as I would like to have it. So it may be slightly difficult to really see all the colors, okay? So I understand that. And we'll see if I can find a fix to that eventually. Now that's just too dark, I think, to start with. So all I'm going to do is just start adding a little bit more of that titanium white and onto just that same pile of color until I get what I want. So I might use that darker shade in this painting too. But no need to worry about always having nice little piles of paint of different colors before you start. I think it's much easier to do this way of doing it. Use your piles, build along the sides before you have to scrape everything off. All right, so this lighter shade of blue is going to be closer to the horizon line, which is way down here. So I'm just going to kind of start, where are these lower colors going to go? I think they'll go about here with this light blue. Notice we help create the shapes in what we might call a negative space by cutting into the trees with the color of the sky. So don't think that you have to draw each tree and all the details. You think in terms of layers, and think in terms of these shapes, and that we can use the paint to modify, as I did just there, to modify that shape a little bit with what's surrounding it. And it actually is much easier to do that than if we think that we got to go in with a little brush and do details like a drawing with a pencil and paper, all right? Painting is not drawing with pencil and paper. Pencil and paper drawing can help your artwork, of course, but it is different. You do not want to be that detailed. Or at least most painters don't want to be. At least I don't want to be that detailed. I'm trying to stretch if I maybe I want a higher up on that. And even here, I'm going to use that underpainting, I think, and leave some of that showing through. Now I'm going to have a little bit darker blue at the very top of the sky. So I'm going to take that blue that I already have on the palette and start coming in from the top. And then I'll blend it together when I get to the middle. I always like to leave a little gap between the two, and that way I can do the blending in that area. And how I like to do the blending in the area, I don't know if it's right or wrong. I think sometimes you discover things in the act of painting that fit your style, and don't be afraid to stay with that. Just because an expert says, oh, you should do it this way, remember, most experts became experts because they started doing it in a way that was different than anyone else. We've got a leg issue with these. Something is moving. I don't want it to be moving. Why is it moving? Maybe the palette moves somehow. hope that's level enough. Okay, so now take this paper towel. There we go. Clean off my brush. Don't even have to put the Gamasol in there, right? Sometimes cleaning the brush off can create more of a mess than it's necessary. Just use a good paper towel. You'll get most of that paint off of there. And for this, we're just blending those two colors together so that we're going to be messing it up anyway. So now I'm going to blend these two areas with an up and down motion using the base of the brush here. Not getting up here for details, but to really get some movement. Oh, I see what's happening. This is starting to fall backwards on me. Why is that falling backwards? This is not tight enough. There we go. One bad thing about French easels, oftentimes the nut bolts and so forth, the wing nuts, they get loose over time and can really be a pain. So, especially if it's a cheap easel, this is a cheap easel. All right, let's go. Now, this is a dry brush technique in which I'm just taking the edge of those colors and pulling them up together. And I think I want some of that orange right in that area to show through. Of course, we won't really know how effective that is until we get to the end stage. And keep that in mind as you're painting, to recognize, you know what, I can fix that later if I don't like it. But I won't really know it until I get all the colors on the painting. This doesn't really look like much. Might be totally the wrong shade of color that I'm looking for, but I won't know that yet. So forgive yourself and don't do everything yet. Okay, so I've got a basic sky in there and that shape done. Go ahead and now wipe the brush off a little bit more. I'm also going to shift my focus to a new brush, a little bit bigger brush. Now we're going to make an green. So got some choices here. We're going to stick with Arcade Yellow Light. Make a pile down here. And I got Phthalo Blue, but that's a cooler blue. It leans towards the green shade. Ultramarine Blue is a little bit warmer. We're going to use the warmer blue. And kind of put that in there. And since these sit back and they're not the star of the show, I don't want them to be very bright. I want them to be kind of nondescript, I think. So I want a rather dark green. So I'm going to take a little bit of time and mix it here. Oh, it's always nice to use the primaries together to have a little bit of each of your yellow, blue, and red. So we're going to take a little bit of the Alizarin Crimson Permanent. Not a whole lot, just a dab will do you. And now I'm mixing that into my green mixture. Now that's a little bit too red. I'm going to put a little bit more yellow in there. That's kind of too brown. I'm going to put a little bit more blue. A lot more yellow now. All right, I think that's good. I'm going to dip it into my Gamsol just to make the paint flow a little bit better. That Gamsol will be evaporated in the air. Now, this is a trick that I've seen some other painters do, especially in the California Impressionist movement. They will actually block the shapes kind of like this. And I thought that I might try this painting today. Where the edges are going to go. Okay, so just give a sense of what the shapes look like. Now we can always modify this, so it's not hurting anything to start like this. Add a little bit of design if I want to, a little bit of change of how I'm applying the pressure. And I'm not trying to be perfect, you see. I'm not painting trees. I'm just painting the shapes. And basically, I'm just thinking the shapes of the tops of these trees, where they might be. And I will have plenty of time to do more detail later on. There we go. Now, still using that same mixture of color, I'm basically going to come down and paint inside these lines that I just created with some different strokes. The whole point now is just to cover this canvas, and then I will apply some different shapes and so forth later on. Right now, I just want to get these big shapes into the painting. Now, I'm going to say that these trees kind of end around here, so we have a little bit of a bank and a little bit shorter grass across this plane of water. And notice I am intentionally scumbling the color into the canvas. I don't want this particular stage of the block end to be very thick paint, because I'm going to be coming over the top of it with more thick paint later. I want this to be kind of loose right now. I'm not quite sure where the trunks of the trees are going to go, so I'm going to have a few of these vertical strokes in. Now I've almost eliminated all that green, so I'm going to have to get a little bit more paint here. Remix that mixture, ultramarine blue, the cad yellow light, a little bit more, the blue in here, a little bit more, just a tad, touch of the alizarin crimson. That's too much. There we go. And a little bit more of the yellow if I can get it off of here. There we go. Okay, that's close enough to that color. Don't have to worry at this point about your brush stroke or the pollen count today is also very high, so my apologies. Some of that's getting to me. Got the fan going, as you hear. I got the air conditioning running. It's like 90 degrees out here in June here in Missouri. All right, or as we like to call it, misery. Anyway. Now, this I want to pop closer to us, to make it closer. I think it's also going to be kind of green, kind of a mountain covered with some trees. So, it's going to be a little bit darker. I think I'm going to go darker than this green. And this is a good time. My colors are kind of disappearing on me. I'm going to reach back here and add some of those colors to my palette, because what I got left is already dried up from the last painting session I had. I don't really have to scrape the whole thing off. I'm just going to get the colors I need and put them in about the same place that I've had them on my palette before. I'm not a very clean painter, I guess. But a lot of the best painters were also pretty messy, I do believe. Maybe I'm just making that up, but I think I remember correctly that someone said they were. More of my red. Okay. Alright, still in this green pool of color, I'm going to make a darker green. So this way, it'll help me see it. So I'm going to put that ultramarine blue in there. Just a tad of yellow. A little bit of the alizarin crimson red. A little bit more. Always add just a little bit of color. You don't want to ruin the whole pile by putting way too much too early. And once again, I'm going to use that technique of some of the California Impressionists and begin to sketch some of the lines in this mountain form before I think about coloring it in depth. And what happens is, look at this. This is what I'm concerned about. Up against the other color, is this reading darker? Is it reading warmer? Is it reading cooler? This looks to be dark enough to me. And then I'm going to, I can play around with some other colors in the larger shapes in once we get the blocking done. So I think that's going to be enough of a change in the color intensity or your tonal value to make that stand out. So now that I know that I'm satisfied with that, once again making sure that I keep this paint relatively thin, I'm going to now go in quickly and sketch this big shape. So that whole shape is basically that same color. What's going to happen when we go in after this is to create the illusion of detail within each of these first big shapes that we put down on our canvas. Now we've already got the sky, we've got the big shapes of the forest trees, this mountain scene which also has trees, and we're just about ready. And see also that underpainting, quite a bit of the underpainting is still showing. Now we're going to turn our attention to this lower portion of the painting. This is going to be the water element. I'm going to save that for last. We've got these lower grass plains. What color do we need for them? Well, we need a color that has more yellow, more red in it. That's going to be warmer because it's closer to the viewer. So I'm just going to, once again, take the paper towel, clean off the paint. This time around, for a more vibrant green and a contrast, I'm taking the cad yellow light right next to my greens, but this time I'm going to add phthalo blue, just a little bit. This is a more intense green, and it's probably way too intense to put it on like that. So what we will do, of course, if you remember your color theory, so we've already mixed two of the primaries, a blue and a yellow. We're going to add in a little touch of the red to knock this color down. You don't have to use black. Black's on the palette today, but I kind of prefer to knock it down with the other primary color instead. Got a little too much red there probably. Now add that in there. And I like this. Remember, I'm just using my imagination, so I have no way of knowing how well these colors are going to work yet. But that knocks that green down just enough that it doesn't look like some artists call it an acid green, and I never liked the acid green look. So, and the underpainting, the orange will also help this as well. Now, we want some of this grass closer to that mountain to look a little bit less colorful. So how do we do that? We're going to add a little bit of the titanium white. And I'm going to mix it right here. We can go more. Now I'm just kind of judging. We can go even lighter. There we go. You see the tonal value shift now? It's slight. I don't want it to be so extreme that it calls attention to itself. But there it is. This has more white in it, which means that we've reduced the impact of the yellow and the red in it. And then we will leave this at that intensity. That's going to be closer to the viewer. So we're going to start with this whiter, less saturated color. I still want more white in that, I think. Yeah, there we go. And that's going to be closer here. So, and this is a plane. So to get that effect, instead of going up and down, it's not a tree. It doesn't need to be painted vertically. We're going to use cross strokes. We're going to go horizontally. This is the road, remember, so I'm going to leave part of that alone. Once again, don't worry about details. We will get there soon enough. And I like the contrast of this color, so we're going to keep with it. To push a lot of that back. And now we're going to add the darker green. To make sure we don't contaminate that, let's wipe this off of our brush. You don't have to be perfectly clean. There's no need to dump it in the Gamsol yet. And now we're going to take this other shade that we had made earlier, and we're going to stick that over here. So. And here I'm going to use more of the vertical strokes to indicate some depth in this grass. You see there's just a little bit of variance. It's not much. In fact, I'm going to darken that just a little bit with some of the other green that was on my palette. Just making that a little bit more. There we go. That's a little bit darker. You see that? Excuse me. Greener. Sure I get behind that. I think I got it behind me. This green goes right up to that water element. I'm really applying the pressure because there's not a lot of paint here. But if we do it lightly, it'll be so much easier to put down some other colors on top of it. I'm also kind of blending a little bit with that purple outline. Get a few different, see what happens there. I don't want a lot of, I want to create more variety up front here. I guess what we're trying to say. Turn this a little bit darker. All right. Now we got that in. You can tell that this is lighter, this is darker, but they're different shades of green than over there. And now shift our attention for a second back to this line of trees. This paper towel might still work. When you have trees at a distance and you know that they're large, they're fluffy, You usually see more of the leaves in this area. Down here, we're going to see a lot of the tree trunks, but not really if it's too far back. What we see is the dark shadows. We already have this dark purple here. We're going to mix some more of that. Ultramarine blue, crimson, alizarin crimson, a little bit more of the ultramarine blue. I'm going to add just a slight touch of the titanium white to knock that purple down just a little bit. Don't want it terribly intense. I think this is what I want. I think that's the color I want about. And I'm going to now come in and create some illusions of detail by just pushing the shoreline back. And yes, I'm using vertical strokes to do this, suggesting that this growth is coming up into this tree line. Push a few of these up a little bit more. Vary the brush strokes a little bit. This is also handy because as it's darker, on the next layer, I can go in with a little bit of some lighter colors, and they're gonna pop out from there. Now, of course, it's in the background, so I don't want it to pop out too much, but it will affect the painting, that is for sure. Now, these are also casting a shadow down into the water. And so what we can do with that is we want straight strokes down here. We don't want that. We want vertical strokes, indicating some shadows coming from those trees. So it's almost like that shoreline is kind of disappearing a little bit. We can tighten it up a little bit. Just a few of those strokes there. So now, we're getting the illusion that there's got to be a shoreline here, but we're going to brighten that up a little bit later. But those shadows is what I'm going for. In fact, where I've left some of that orange, I'm going to cover a little bit of that orange up. There we go. Now, still with the purple, we can use this purple to create the road. We add titanium white to it. We add a little bit of the cad yellow light. Then a little bit of the ultramarine blue. We create a kind of bluish purple neutral color. Add more titanium white to it. Now off to the side, we're still using the shape, right? We take a lot of that titanium white. There we go. I want kind of a muddy brown that's lighter to go back here. It needs to be sort of the same value as this green here that we had used back there. So I put that next to it. If I squint, I cannot tell the difference. That's good. So this mixture is right on target for this total value. Mix this on my brush, make sure it's not too dark. Right. And then I just want a few of those brush strokes. See how that kind of blends into that green? You can't tell quite the distinction. We're going to go all the way to where we don't see that light green anymore. All right, now, this is the important part. Make sure you wipe your brush off. And then we're going to use that darker value for parts of that path that are closer to us. And now I don't have to worry about more horizontal strokes. there, so I'm gonna just varied it with a couple little strokes there is what I did. See how this is the value of this darker green. Almost totally disintegrates into that. Okay, so now we almost have the entire first coat laid down in this mask. The only remaining element is the water. Now, the water, in this case, is going to be darker than the sky, but it's going to be a kind of a blue. So, ultramarine blue. I'm just going to use it right over top of the other blues I have here, which are the sky colors. Certainly darker than sky. Add a little bit of the Gamsol just to get it flowing. And I'm going to try to cover this. I'll leave a little bit of that purple in there. Now I'm applying strokes that are straight down, which is helpful to give the illusion of detail and that this is a reflective body coming down this way. Okay, now I want my lightest blue in this little area. Add some titanium white to this. I like that color. I think it's, let's see what this looks like. Yes, I like that. Some of it is just intuition. The more you paint, the more you will feel confident about the choices that you're making. Now that doesn't mean the rest of the world's going to be comfortable with what choices you've made, but at least you will be confident in the choices that you've made. And that's all that matters. If you try to chase the criticism or the compliments of peers or judges, it's not going to be helpful. You're going to feel defeated eventually. You may gain some attention at first, but it can be seductive. All right. Now I'm taking a look and seeing if this kind of makes sense. Okay, so I've covered the canvas. We've got my diagonal, so we got the composition about where we want it. Now, this is the stage where I take a moment, make sure all the shapes are working together, that there's nothing that's a big problem, because I can still fix it at this stage. And now I want to scrape the entire palette and get ready for more vibrant colors to go over top of this pretty neutral painting at this point. So I get my paper towels, get this mess. I put a trash bag, by the way, inside of the easel. There's kind of a hole in these French easels where you can use these clips here and place it into, which is very handy. I know a lot of people spend a lot of money on easels these days. There's other types out there that are less confining, less weight, but I will tell you, nothing beats a good, strong easel when there's any wind and there's any kind of weather elements to deal with, and it's rather compact. You can put anything you want in there. So, and it's you can get some of these if you're starting out relatively cheap. Just in case, if you don't really like it, you're not spending a ton of money, and you're not going to feel bad about it. Some people, I think, rush out and they buy the most expensive setup, and then they have a lot of regret. Number one, they don't even know how they like to paint yet. So how do you know if you like a Bashad box that sits on top of a tripod, or you like more of a table setup Or you like something that everything can go in one box. Yeah, it's a little bit more heavier, but you don't have to juggle 3 or 4 different bags. And that's what I discovered with some of those that say it's a lot less weight, and it is. But then I would have 3 bags I was packing. I don't know. The French easel, well, you could throw your small paint tubes in. You got places for your brushes. It's got a built-in panel holder for you, so you don't. If you use that for your panel holder, you don't have to have a panel carrier. You don't have to have a separate bag for your paints. You don't have to worry about some other container for your brushes. You've got it all in one area. So be careful when people try to tell you that oh, the newer ones are so much. There's a reason why they still sell these French easels all over the place, and it's not because they're bad. It's probably because they have stood the test of time. The newer designs, who knows? You know, in a few years, maybe no one's using those anymore. All right, so they've cleaned their palette off here. Now I'm going to look at this and see what details do we need. We certainly need to put some highlights in, a little bit of clouds, I think, in the sky. So let's start at the top and we're going to work our way down. So for the clouds, titanium white, that's kind of a given, right? But we don't want it to be so cold. How do we warm this up? I like to use just a little bit of the yellow ochre. Yellow ochre because it's not so bright as that yellow. Just add a little bit like that. Let's move it in. And it certainly warms it up, and it's a much different intensity than that titanium white. Then I like to use the palette knife for this, partly because I want to make sure that the clouds look rather random. So I can get very random marks by doing this. So I'm going to use that the orange that's kind of showing through as part of the clouds. So I'll put some places with the palette knife on the top of that. Not going to worry too much. Just kind of sticking some paint on the canvas. Okay, so that's been done. Take the paint off of my palette knife. I'm going to take, this is the number 4 brush, and I'm going to clean it off again. This time I want it really clean, so I'm going to use the Gamsoft. Pull as much paint off of it as I can. Another paper towel. And I don't know how other people do it. Like I said, this way is the way I found to make clouds easy. And so now I've just put that over there, and I'm going to take the end of my brush, this is a dry brush, and I'm just going to make some marks. I'm just going to kind of let the brush go where it wants to go. So I'll just kind of line it up there and just kind of let it do its job. Vary the pressure a little bit, move in different areas. I'm being very careful. I don't want to obliterate the color. Just trying to see where the paint wants to go. At least that's what I'm hoping. And of course, clouds are nice and fluffy. They're also unpredictable, and and relatively small details. So. And these on this particular sky, I want them to be very subtle. It seems to me to be a day that's near the end of the sun's life. The sun's about to set, in other words. I think it's a sunset. That's the one key when you're doing emotion, when you're doing imagination. You can, I don't know, maybe it's sunset, maybe it's evening. Let your imagination put those details in a little bit. So the palette knife, I think, can be a great tool for just getting some paint in a very random style on the canvas, and then let your imagination, your brush, do some of that other work. All right, to me, I think that looks fairly natural, and it gives you a sense of some detail without really doing a lot. As you saw. There's no genius at work there. I know, yes. I know you were laughing at that, saying, well, you're not a genius at anything, we don't think. But correct, probably correct. Okay. At this point, I also need to decide, where is the focal point? Is it on the shoreline? Is it the water? Where do I want the viewer to look? Well, I've got this road going back here. I think I really want to focus the focal point right in this circle area right here. Now that's almost dead center. So maybe I shift it just a little bit this way or a little bit up. I think I want to shift it right over in this area a little bit. That would take me away from the center. So we're going to act as if there's some sun over here casting light in this area more intensely than anywhere else. So it'd be kind of like the sun is setting and more of the light is coming in this direction down here. To make sure I don't do too much detail work, I'm going with a bigger brush. This is a number 6. Yetrek, it's the hog bristle brush. I'm going to now mix up a green that's going to serve as my highlight. So I'm taking cad yellow light, and quite a bit of it. I'm going to use some ultramarine blue. A little bit more, because we don't want it to be such a contrast that it calls too much attention to itself. We want people to believe that, well, this could still be part of this tree mass. So that's why we're using the same colors for our green mixture here. I think that's still a little bit too light. It might compete. Add a little bit more of the blue. A touch of the alizarin crimson. Knock that green down just a little bit more. And since it sits back just a little bit, I'm going to put a little bit of the titanium white into it. Maybe even a little bit more of that titanium white. All right. I think that this might work. So let's see. Not going to know until we risk something. So I'm going to risk it. And then we're going to make it look like they're trees by just, this was a flat, but it now almost looks like it is, oh my goodness, filbert, because it's rounded on the edges. So here we go. I'm going to just kind of sketch in the tops of these trees that are receiving more light. Varying it by brush stroke in terms of its intensity. Just touching kind of the top of it, almost as if I had a fan brush. And I guess you could use a fan brush if you wanted to. I always find that my fan brushes, the bristles get bent and disfigured pretty quickly because I'm so bad at it, and then it doesn't really read correctly here. Now, especially when I get closer to that purple, I want to take full advantage of making that purple stand out a little bit more by putting this light shade pretty close to it. So just kind of varying the treetops a little bit. There might be places where we don't see much of that. And since this light is kind of coming behind this, there's still going to be areas here that are receiving some light like this. So we're going to continue to suggest this, but less detail work as we work over to this side of the painting. If that makes sense. See how the mind begins to read this as detail, as trees. Now, as I step away from it, I think it is reading more correctly. I am noticing that this is not dark enough. I will have to come back in there, I believe, and really add some more purple underneath that canopy to cause more attention to, especially right here. So that we have our lightest light and the darkest dark. In this general area right here is where I want the focus. Okay, I think I'm pretty satisfied with that. I'm going to need something on this. I don't want that just to be this kind of blob. Obviously, this green has to be a little bit darker. So, but still within kind of the same family. So I'm going to put some ultramarine blue here, along with that yellow. I'm going to make this a little bit green, darker, but it still has to show up as lighter than the green I already put down. And here, I want my brush strokes to be a little bit more bold and thick to suggest a similar kind of effect, that there's trees on here. So let's just try it. I think this is working. I don't have to have a lot up here. I don't want a lot of detail there to call too much attention to it. I don't want this line to be too straight, so I can suggest that there's places where there's some canopy kind of moving out away from that space. And so maybe we have some darker spots here, and then we're seeing some more of that canopy here. Maybe those strokes a little bit. Just kind of create the illusion that there's vegetation here by just using the variety of this slight tonal value shift. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of some bushes around here. We can use a few little details to kind of suggest these growing into it. Get rid of any definite lines. Over here, same way, let's kind of distort that line. A little bit more of this green along here. Now you see how that's pushed everything back. This has given this some a little bit more attention. very few strokes. So that I think I'm happy with right now. And so as I'm taking the painting now, I'm thinking about, okay, what do we need to do to make this look a little bit better? So first, my thought is I need to go back in with the darker purple. So I'm going to do that. Ultramarine blue. Now, might as well, this is the layer, so we want some thicker paint anyway. So I'm going to grab a lot of that. See how much paint I got there? And then a little bit of the red. A little bit more of that red. And then, like I said, there's no substitute for practicing this and coming up with the shades that you intuitively can mix. Now, using the same brush, I'm going to come in and create the underbrush here. And hopefully, as I put this darker color on, you will see how the canopy of the trees is going to really take life, I hope. Of course, I don't want to go too far up because that lighter purple there can suggest some depth. Trying not to make the same shape all the time. Go right down to the riverbank. Put a few darker shades. A little bit less pressure. Back there, Elaise. Now, to straighten that shoreline just a little bit, I can take my brush. There we go. I'm going to lighten up the green mixture. Cad yellow, a little bit of the green that was already on there. Kind of an in-between green is what I'm looking for. I think this will do just fine. I'm going to put a few little marks here because this is a little bit closer to the viewer and it's going to really help us suggest some other trees and some other things going on there. Within the other shape. So just varying the strokes just ever so slightly to create the illusion of detail. Look, literally all I'm doing is putting little pieces of that paint into the purple. I don't want to take all the purple out, but this gives us a sense of depth, doesn't it? You see it now? As I'm going in with just a few little marks, that your brain is reading this as more foliage, more trees. And a lot of it's just achieved by making sure that you're not trying for wild distinctions of color. Some people think that you've got to be so bold, they're squeezing out tubes of paint, they're not really even mixing it much and putting it together, and it doesn't read very natural. All right, now I want to do something with these lines on the big shapes here. I don't think I need to go back in and put any more detail in there. What I think I need to do is work on making sure that my lines here are, some are a little bit sharper than others. I want to cover up a little bit more of the orange and just see where it takes me. Stop, get a little drink first. So I'm just taking that same brush, I've cleaned it off, and I'm going to go over the lines again. dry brush, I'm just kind of scraping it right over top of that. I want to blur some of those lines. There's not a lot of lines in nature. Unless that's some kind of rock formations, it's going to look more less distinct. So I want that same thing over here. I think I like that. Go this way a little bit. Blending. Because this isn't my highlight. Yeah, if I have too many solid lines here, people might assume that that's the highlight that I want them to look at. Those two shapes are different. It's different in that shape. Different than the shapes of these trees below. Now over here, we certainly don't want strong, pronounced lines here leading off the canvas. I'm just actually taking that dry brush now and just tapping it on those lines. Just to see let the paint kind of do its job. And it will come up with some interesting things without you doing much. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. I've got some of that orange, which is needed. If you ever need some of that. And it's also in the clouds, so I think that's kind of working. Now, I want to come into this plane here and see what else do I need. Number one, I think my road, it's very subtle, so maybe I keep it like that. I'm not quite sure what I want to do yet with that. I think I do know how to get your attention into this, and that's to add a little bit of a shoreline. It's going to be a little lighter, kind of a light brown. Oh wait, I already got that on my palette. That's the same color that was in the clouds. We're going to take that. It just might be enough of it. Ran all the way across there. You see what that did? Running it all the way about there. There's the strength of the color. And as the color poured out of the branches, out of the brushes, it got lighter and lighter. But it still suggests that there's light coming in here and it's dissipating, that there's some kind of little bit of a shoreline here next to that harsh purple. And it really attracts the eye. Where do we want it to go? Our focal point right in this area. Now, with any water, there's got to be a little bit of movement. So, what do we do about that? Well, we've got a number of choices. I'm going to use a palette knife for this. There may not be enough paint on here to do this, but I like running a few lines with the end of the paint with the palette knife to suggest where there's ripples in the water. So I'll just go like this on that kind of dried paint. See if I can move it a little bit. Back and forth. Get a sense that this water is sort of moving. It's not terribly stagnant. Now I'm going to take a little bit of that titanium white that I had in the clouds, put on here. And we're going to put a little bit of that detail right here near this shoreline. So this is where we're more likely to be able to see this, right? That's kind of a blur, but this here, this area where we can have a little bit of interest. I don't want it to be the sole interest of it, so I don't want it to be too bright. Yeah, I think I like that. I think that suggests some things going in that water. And now once again I'm looking at this road. It's coming around here. I think I want to put a little bit of that path into that. I don't know how to describe it, but titanium white, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of blue, ultramarine blue, a little bit of the red to create a brown. Let's see, that's too red, so we'll knock it down with the ultramarine blue. Now a bunch of the titanium white. That's nice. I like it sometimes when you get this marble effect. Keep that on there. That's more interesting than this. So now I'm going to put this right there. I'll pull this paint down just a little bit. Now I'm going to get that paintbrush out. Pull this color down slightly. Put more on that paintbrush. Still using some of that variety that was on the palette. Go back over those areas. Create a little bit more visual interest in the space here. All right. What do you think? I think I like it. This is the dangerous part of painting because I feel like we're almost done. I'm wondering if it is done, or do we need greater interest in some way? I could put a few more vertical strokes or a little bit darker colors to suggest a few of these weeds and stuff that are up here. That might look good. Or if I do that, is it going to take so much interest away from here that it's actually going to hurt the painting? I think what I want to do is I stare at that a little bit more. I'm going to take the same brush, I'm going to take a little bit of the purple, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be very gentle in putting a few little highlights in these grasses. Not much. Varying my brush strokes a little bit. In fact, just kind of letting the brush kind of do its work. Where do you want to go today, brush? You want to go up here? All right, very good. Oh, a few strokes here to suggest a little bit of variety in the color. But notice I don't want to be painting blades of grass, and I certainly don't want this purple to be as intense as that. But now I think it does give the eye a sense that there's some stuff that's closer to the viewer, which I think makes some sense. Over here, same way, I want to go in a little bit stronger with a few here. And now, I really feel satisfied that that looks like a pretty good landscape. The oranges, I think, are working, letting some of that come through even in the sky. Sense that there could be some terrain that's in between those grasses there. We've got a variety of greens. some darker blues, a little bit of the shadow from those tree lines coming into the water. Yep, I think we're ready. I am going to call it quits. I've often found that if I get to this point and I'm kind of struggling on what to do, that's a sign that I should just stop. I'm also kind of a minimalist. In other words, the fewest strokes, the fewest shapes to make a good painting, oftentimes the better I think it reads. And we're inviting our readers, our viewers, to add all the other stuff in, so that this looks like a much more detailed painting than what you just saw me paint, correct? All it is little dabs of paint, and keeping your values close together helps you much more than if we had a wild different green over here and we got a big green over here or different other colors. It's not very natural, and then it doesn't create color harmony that way either. The only thing I'm thinking about this short line, I guess it's kind of, now if I put any more dark purples along this line, that's going to take away from the focal point. So I'm not even going to do that. Nope, I'm going to stick with the plan. Keep reminding myself that. Stick with the plan. There it is. I use a little rubber tool to side my paintings. So that's where I'm going to turn my attention to now. I'll put this down so I can clean that up in a minute. I could put my signature here. Most people in America, though, we read from left to right. So in reading left to right, we'll put our signature over here. I kind of cut into the paint that I've already put down and actually sign my name. Well, thank you so much for watching me paint this painting. I hope that you will too. If you, like I said before, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. There'll be more videos in the future. Give us a thumbs up for this video and make a comment. I don't care how crazy it is or how small it is. The more comments you get, I tend to think that that may help the algorithm. Maybe you know more than I do about that. Maybe it doesn't affect it all that much, but it seems to me that the videos I've had more reader comments on seem to be located and watched more readily. So it's just an observation I have. Well, thanks again, and I will see you in the next video as I now come to my setup and turn you off.